there's not going to be any real standard dimensions for them, so this is going to take a bit of time. Just how complex these cuts need to be in order to fit nice and snug. They've come up lovely, just like buying dressed timber. I want to put a little inspection plate here, an access point. I just marked out where this is over where those two bits of conduit come through. Alright, now that all of those panels are made for the lining here in the V-berth, as well as the cabin sole, it's a matter of moving on to making up a whole bunch of battens. I need little battens, where are we? I need battens for here on the frames. I need battens on that anchor bulkhead. There's others as well which are off camera at the moment. The lining down the sides of the hull here, on this side of this main bulkhead, they need battens as well. Now the thing with them is every single one, well except for the anchor bulkhead, every single one is going to be individual. There's not going to be any real standard dimensions for them, so this is going to take a bit of time actually. So it's a case of starting, pick off one and move on, and then of course everything has to go through the 4 days of epoxy painting process. So this is going to take a little bit of time before I can actually install all of these lining panels. After all the coats of epoxy and a bit of notching for those bolts, let's see how this fits. Well, it fits snug. That looks like a good fit. On top, I'll be able to lay that lovely rosewood hardwood.
We're running out of light. Time is changing day to night. Lines are fading out, and we're dancing in the park. Nothing's wrong with when I start, 'cause you look better in the dark. Oh, counting days, I made it through.
Now in order to be able to fit these lining pieces, what I want to do is put some timber beams, some rosewood beams down this centre line. This is a space of 800 millimetres, and I think it's better to have supports every 400 millimetres, which is what all the stations were designated as, at 400 mil centres for each station. And so, as you can see, I've pre-fitted these cleats with this in mind. So what I'm doing now, as you've just seen, I've cut these bits of rosewood up because they're somewhat hidden once the panel goes on. I just made them a bit wider just to make sure I get the fasteners in them, and so each one's going to be different. For example, the first one here, I'll actually bolt and fix bond to the overhead beam here, and that will just hang down. So this will be cut off there. The next one will be bolted between the cleat here and this stringer. The other thing I need to take into account in fitting these is they're not square where they're going to be attaching, so everything needs to be cut at a slight bevel, a slight angle in order to fit, and that's what I'm doing now. And so the next one will go between there like that, and again the angles need to be cut, and then once they've been trimmed off and checked that they fit, obviously everything will just need a light sand, and then everything can go through the epoxy coating. I'll also be using the little trimmer. As some people may have seen in a prior episode, that trimmer just takes off those sharp corners very, very quickly, makes light work of that. Then these will be able to be fitted, and then all the lining can be fitted, and that's what I'm waiting on now, to get these finished so that I can put all the lining in.
Without someone like you, we're running running out of light. Time is changing day to night, and you keep asking why. I'm out of control of my body and my soul. Don't wanna be whole. For you I'm just unknown, and you're not that someone who will find my heart and bring peace to my mind. So move on, 'cause I will find the way on my own.
Just to explain those bits of batten that I was cutting up, they're different sizes, as I mentioned. They've all come up well on the sanding. It is quite an easy matter of turning those rosewood planks that I've got just rough cut down into the sorts of sizes of timber that I need for different things. I mean, it's basic tools really, and it's just handy to be able to make things exactly that you need to do the job you want. Under here also, this bit of plywood is a continuation of the aft bulkhead for the V-berth. That'll go right up to the side deck and form the forward end of the cabinets there. The other thing I wanted to point out is just how complex these cuts need to be in order to fit nice and snug. Hopefully you can see that, but nothing's at right angles with this stuff. Now that I'm getting down to this, the angles are quite complex. The angles are a little bit tricky to get right, but they have come up well. You can see there. And it's not just one end, it's both ends that have their own individual angles that need to be cut. For me, it's fun. I enjoy the little challenges of getting each little bit fitted right. Now that they're all sanded, they can go through the epoxy painting process.
Now life is happening and I don't wanna miss a thing. Letting go is not a sin. Oh, counting days, I made it through without someone like you. We're running out of light.
So that's had its edges all trimmed up with a little trimmer. They've come up lovely, just like buying dressed timber. I just thought I'd also point out the colour difference. Not sure how well that comes out, but you can see here the range of colours. It goes from, brown, reddy, quite red, a darker brown, and somewhat of a lighter brown here. It's the range of colours that you can get with rosewood. I like all the colours and for different things, but this is the sort of colour, probably my favourite. The last thing I need to do with these battens before I can actually give them their epoxy coating is all of these ones need to have a bevel cut off so that when they're mounted, whether it be onto the frames or onto the lining panels themselves, that they will have the right angle in order to either take the lining, or for these battens, these are actually going to be fitted to the panels. They won't be able to be bolted to battens which are attached to the frames. The reason for that is these lining panels will actually be against the hull where there are bulkheads, and in those situations the bulkheads themselves were bolted to the frames, and so I can't have battens taking both the bulkhead and the lining. Probably sounds confusing. I'm going to be epoxy gluing and screwing some of these battens to the lining panels themselves, and then I'll actually be able to drill through the battens directly into the bulkheads so that some of the panels, either on one or both ends, will actually be being attached to the bulkheads. And so what I'm going to do here is I'll use the panel saw here. I've been very happy with this saw. It's actually a British made product. Evolution is the brand, and it really has turned out to be a great buy. It was around about half the price of the other traditional brands, Makita, Ryobi, others. I really have no complaints. This has been terrific. I'll be able to set the angle up, which will be 19 degrees. Rip all of these battens through the saw here. That'll give me the right angle, and then I can get on with epoxy coating these. The other thing I didn't show on camera with regards to these wider battens is I did show cutting those angles, those complex angles with the tenon saw, and I did do that with all of them, but what I found was it just wasn't a clean enough cut. So I actually set the saw up here using the crosscut slide, as well as setting up an angle on the main saw itself. I was able to play with the angles by using the crosscut slide to get the angle right this way, and then with the saw head itself get the angle right that way. And that was how I was able to arrive at those rather cleanly cut angles.
We're running out of light. Time is changing day to night, and you keep asking why. I'm out of control. My body and my soul don't wanna be whole. For you I'm just unknown, and you're not that someone who will find my heart and bring peace to my mind. So move on.
I want to put a little inspection plate here, an access point that I can get through to the electrical cables where they come through into the V-berth from the saloon. So what I've done is just marked out where I'm going to cut that, and what I'll actually do is I'll use the jigsaw, but I'll put it on about a 20-degree angle, which means that that plate there will be able to be used as the cover plate and will become flush with the panel after I cut it out. So in other words, this panel where I'll cut that out, it'll have an angle like that, and when I put it back it'll just nestle into that V and return to being part of that panel. I just marked out where this is over where those two bits of conduit come through, which is about back here, and so that's enough to get your hand in and pull cables if the need arises. And then all I did was, using the top off of a can, made the radiuses.
'Cause I will find the way on my own. Oh, I don't wanna be running from you, but I know what I'm running from. Oh, you keep saying fine, but I'm not in line. No, not this time.
After what has been a bit of a long process making all of those little battens, as well as getting everything epoxy painted, pretty much spent the whole week out of the boat actually. In the next video, yoo-hoo, those panels go in. And the reason I did that was they're 24 or 25. Wait for that motorbike to go by. Of how I will, what is wrong with my voice? Please like, subscribe, hit that bell and share. I'd really appreciate that.